Welcome into a Monday edition to kick off the second full week of the month of May on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. Just Fulton Caster here with you on this Monday. Jake LeBon has the day off again, so it is just me one more time. Jake will be back with us on tomorrow's show. I will not be calling this a Victory Monday, because there is no universe where I can call what happened for the Kansas City Royals over the weekend a victory. And we will get into that. But what occurred at Kauffman Stadium at One Royal Way in those 3 games over the weekend, in not a singular universe, can be described as an overall victory. I can't do it. And I'm the most optimistic guy around when it comes to the Royals. Can't do it. Won't do it. We will get into that. We have a jam-packed edition of the show coming at you today here on Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW. We will look at the Royals dropping their series to the Oakland Athletics, losing 2 of 3 games to a team that had not won 2 in a row all year long. We'll look at a transaction the Royals have made today and what that could mean as well. We're going to look at the Chiefs' offensive line, something we have talked about a lot here over the past few shows with the addition of Donovan Smith. But as I've thought about this more, something really interesting has popped into my mind about the flexibility of the Chiefs' offensive line and what it could mean for what they do next year as well. We'll look at that coming up here in the 1 o'clock hour. We will look at the Royals hitting, because I think we should talk about positive things with this baseball team when we can. And folks, the Royals hitters, they're young hitters, the ones that give you the most even sliver, tiny piece of hope for the future. They're all hitting well at the exact same time. We will look at that and actually look at some positivity that could happen for this Kansas City Royals team. 2 o'clock, we will hear from Andy Reid. He is set to speak to the media at 1, which means doing the Chiefs will speak at like 1:30. Whoever knows when he'll be on. But we will hear from Andy Reid and get his comments as Chiefs rookie minicamp wraps up. They would happen mostly over the weekend, wraps up today. So we'll get Andy Reid's thoughts on the rookies and how those guys have all been performing. We'll get an edition of Overreaction and Proper Reaction, where we recap the weekend with our weekend takeaways and fails. Michael Peterson of Bolts from the Blue, the Los Angeles Chargers SB Nation site, will join me at the bottom of this hour as we look at our friends, the Los Angeles Chargers, and what did they do in the NFL draft? How does Michael feel that their draft came out? How do they line up to play coming up this season in the AFC West, as I believe they are the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC West. And then today's Everyone Loves the List, the biggest bust from the 2014 NFL Draft's first round. Today is the 9-year anniversary. 9 years ago today, we had the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft. And boy, I ask all of you to go back and look at that first round, because there are some doozies that were picked in the first round. Kyle is going to join me, and we will do Everyone Loves the List, the biggest bust from the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft. As always, you can join in on the conversation on our text line, 785-272-9429, or give us a shout on our Fleming Place Wine and Spirits phone line, 785-272-9429. You can also jump in the comments section of our YouTube live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And you can jump in the live comment section as well. But where do we begin on this gorgeous Monday afternoon? 78 degrees here in the capital city, fairly sunny, not super windy, a gorgeous May Day. Where we begin is with the Kansas City Royals, who, listen, I'm known for, talking about touting victories and making sure you do what you can to recognize what's important and keeping things in perspective. And the fact of the matter is, Kansas City Royals did win yesterday. They won 5-1 over the Oakland Athletics. The thing is, there is not a universe that I can conceive in where you can call what happened this weekend a victory. Even winning 5-1 yesterday, the overall weekend was a loss, because you lost 2 of 3 games to the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics, a team who hadn't won a series all year. The Oakland Athletics, a team who had not won back-to-back games all season. The A's, a team who entered the series with 1 fewer loss than the Royals. That A's team, the Royals dropped 2 of 3, which, if you listen to me and my ramblings at all leading into this homestand, I told you the Royals should take 2 of 3 from that series, and I stand by it. That's what should have happened. because and Jake, his thought was, they're separated by one win. How truly can you say the Royals should take 2 or 3 from a team that only have one more win then? And it's because if you looked at all the actual numbers and what makes up that A's team, they're not good. And I know it's still crazy for me to say that after the Royals dropped 2 or 3 games, but the point of the matter is the A's are not good. The Royals are just simply somehow a little worse. At least over that 2-game set, 3-game set, the Royals were worse, which is disappointing and frustrating, particularly because of how it happened. The Royals offense, and we're going to get to that today, is on fuego. Like, they are absolutely hitting like crazy right now. I mean, Hunter Dozier, of all people, is actually hitting well right now. They are playing so incredibly well offensively, and they have 2 wins to show for it. The Royals, for all that they've done, they're averaging 7 runs a game offensively, and they have 2 wins to show for it because of these numbers they've allowed over this homestand. This is over the 6 games of this homestand the Royals are 2-4 on. These are the numbers of the runs they've allowed. 11, 0, 13, 12, 5, 1. That is exactly complete perfect math. 7 runs a game. And it's very simple, as I'm sure all of you noted, and Mark in the YouTube comments points out the thesis of this entire statement. The pitching sucks. And Mark, you are 100% correct. And that's the point here. I talked about this a little bit last week. The pitching is buns. And it's unfortunate. And the worst part is the pitching is not bad, but we can look at how maybe the guys are underperforming and things can get fixed. No, like, the pitching is bad because the talent pool is bad. The pitching for the Royals is poor right now because they employ bad pitchers. Zach Greinke performed well in that game that 0 runs were allowed. That's awesome. He goes tonight. Hope he does it again because he is pitching at home where he's apparently Superman compared to when he, pitches on the road and he becomes, Brad Keller. Ryan Yarbrough looked great yesterday. 5 2/3 innings, allowing just 1 run, and then was taken out of the game after being hit in the face with a terrifying line drive. We do not have any updates on Ryan Yarbrough. If I get any of those, I will quickly get them to you. But last I heard, he is responsive, everything like that. It's just being looked at. Royals have not announced if he needs to go on the injured list or anything like that at the moment. So hopefully Ryan Yarbrough is A-okay. But that's it. That was your good pitching. And that is the part to me that is so discouraging for future projections because that's what everything's about. And less of a harsh tone than Jake usually delivers it. This season's about development and what can you do to be better in 24 and 25. The problem is the guys you need to be better for 24 and 25, Brad Keller and Brady Singer, they're pitching machines. That's what they are. They're throwing batting practice every time they go up there. Brad Keller got the start on Friday night. He was horrible. I mean, downright abysmal. Brady Singer gets to start on Saturday. Looked great in the first inning and then gets shelled the rest of the way. He gave up 5 runs. It's one of those things to where I wish I could do this moment and have one of these segments where I can sit here and go, all right, guys, it looks bad, but here are a few things that I promise it's nerdy numbers, but it means it will get better. I don't have that for you. I don't. I truly, there's nothing for it. The fact of the matter is Brad Keller doesn't know what a strike is. He can't command anything. And he's already reverting back to his old stuff. He's abandoning his new pitches already through 7 starts. That's a terrible sign. Brady Singer is mechanically broken. And I don't know how quickly the coaching staff could maybe right that ship. But the fact of the matter is Brady Singer has no command. And when Brady Singer, who only throws 2 pitches, has no command, that's a problem. And the deeper problem on Brady Singer is when I tweeted out about because I needed somewhere to vent my feelings and frustrations. Singer only has 2 pitches, and you can't be a successful pitcher in Major League Baseball with 2 pitches unless you're one of the rarest exceptions. I use this as the rare exception when I was kind of venting my feelings about it. Spencer Strider for the Braves is a 2-pitch pitcher. And the fact that he succeeds on that speaks to volumes of how great his fastball and slider is. Because normal pitchers need at least 3, if not more, pitches for being starters. You need that. And Brady Singer has 2. He abandons his changeup, never throws it. And his fastball and his slider are not good enough to be his only 2 pitches. Brady Singer's the guy I feel can maybe revert back to something better. I'm starting to think 2022, I've made jokes that was a fluke. I think fluke is too strong of a word. What I'm starting to feel is 2022 is the high water mark. This is the low. True Brady Singer is somewhere in the middle. Because I don't think he will always be this bad. But folks, I do not believe he will always be as good as he was last year. Somewhere in the middle is where I feel Brady Singer's actual existence in Major League Baseball will be. And it depends on can this coaching staff get to him. And I'm willing to give them a chance because they're new. They're all new. This is an entirely new pitching development system and philosophy. So I'm going to give them time to see if they can fix Singer. But he's the only one I got faith for. I got no faith in Brad Keller because the work he did at Driveline that I was so impressed by this offseason is what let him look good early, but he's abandoning it already. It was at Driveline he, crafted that new curveball and that new sweeper. He barely threw them in the start against Oakland. He can't throw his curve for strikes, and it was a good-looking pitch. I don't know what's happening with him. I don't know what it is or what have you. I'm not in that clubhouse. I don't know these guys. But it's unfortunate. And the bigger problem is reinforcements just aren't the closest reinforcements are probably a few weeks away. Like if Ryan Yarbrough goes on the injured list, I have to imagine the plan would be to bring up Austin Cox or Jonathan Heasley and have them start. Or technically Max Castillo is up right now. So maybe you ask him to make some starts. But overall reinforcements, they're not close. Daniel Lynch, I'm hoping does not get rushed back from his rehab start. And he did throw 3 1/3 scoreless innings at Omaha in his rehab outing, but it took him 72 pitches to do it. He still needs some time. He needs some time. The Royals have a lot of positive pitching things at AA and lower. And I know that's what no one wants to hear about, but that's the big picture. This year is bad. It's truly horrible. But if this development does what it needs to, reinforcement could come, just they're not going to come quickly, which means, unfortunately, a lot of bad baseball is about to have to be watched. Or not watched. You all don't have to watch this. I'll watch it for all of us. I will bear the cross. I'll watch it all. Y'all, please do something happier with your time. I will be the one that sits there and laments how bad this team is. But that's where it's at because other parts of this team are so positive. I'm truly excited to get to tell all you guys about the hitting today. We're going to look at that 130, and it's going to be I hope you guys can understand and sit with me for how much that hitting should bring you some positive energy. But yeah, and the Royals are a team that and listen, one series does not a season make. And I know 9 wins is what a season truly does make. They still are searching for their they still are not at double-digit wins, and we're on May 8th. That's a lot of losing. But one series does not mean they are worse than the A's. I still think, over the grand scheme of things, the Royals will finish with a much better record than Oakland. I truly do. But it starts with the Royals finding something with their pitching staff. I don't know what it is. Jordan Lyles can't pitch. Brady Singer can't pitch. And Brad Keller can't pitch. Third fifth rotation can't pitch. Zach Greinke's only good at home. And I don't know if Ryan Yarbrough is making his next start in the rotation. Because right now, all I care for Ryan Yarbrough is his health. That's unfortunate. But it is what it is. Speaking of pitching, the Royals made a roster move today. The Royals have made a trade. Kansas City Royals announced earlier on this morning that they have acquired right-handed pitcher James McArthur from the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for minor league outfielder Junior Marin and cash considerations. To make room on the 40-man roster, Framil Reyes has been DFA'd, which stinks for Framiel, but I think we all kind of knew that experiment was over. The Royals need something better than a guy who strikes out a ton and can't get to his power, and more importantly, can't play any sort of defense. And I know what we're all thinking, that who was still on the roster and he didn't get DFA'd. Fact of the matter is, who is hitting over the past few games, and that's saving his job. And the fact of the matter is, as bad as he is defensively, Framiel might be worse. And Dozier can at least play. I air quoted that for those of you not watching, the infield. But this is an interesting move. James McArthur currently has an ERA over 7 in 5 appearances, 4 starts in AAA for the Phillies, which on the surface makes you all go, wow, they acquired that guy. But the more I've thought about this, Jake has joked a lot that the Royals are basically going to be the Rays in the way that they operate. This is a very Rays-like move. Now, whether the Royals can get Rays-like results is the new question. But the Royals are taking a flyer on a guy with something they like. He has a very good from the look. I've looked into this for about an hour. I spent my morning looking into this after it was announced as a trade. So I'm not an expert on James McArthur, but I've done some digging in. I've also used the resources of some great Royals follows out there to look at what he is. He's got a really good curveball. If the Royals look at him and go, that can be a reliever, 2 to 3 bulk inning reliever who can give us some good innings, and they can convert him into something that's good, that's what a team like this needs to do. You win by finding diamonds in the rough on cast-offs from other teams, because that's what the Rays did. And while I don't believe the Royals are going to go full Rays, if there's an organization they can emulate, at least for pitching, the Rays is one. Where they just, because of how well they can find guys and develop them and fine-tune them, they take cheap cast-offs and get cheap, cost-controlled talent that become legitimate weapons. And I've seen some people talking about how, why are they doing this? They need to help them for 24 and 25 with some of these moves. McArthur's 26. He's legitimately a guy that if they can get into a workable relief pitcher is a piece for a winning team if they can make him good. I don't know if they will, but we'll see. Framiel Reyes, I hope he maybe lands on his feet somewhere. If no one plays him off waivers, I assume the Royals might just reassign him to Omaha, just he won't be on the 40-man anymore. But that speaks to just them being willing to move. And I will say, Dayton Moore always talked about being transactional. This is what transactional looks like. Finding guys to try and do things and improve you when you're hunting for something. The Royals need arms. The Royals recognize their issue right now is pitching. I at least appreciate, whether it works or not, this team is already actively seeking out ways to get better pitching. And the way they're going to do that is through development. So on the surface, you're acquiring a guy with numbers that don't look great, but if the Royals think they can make him into something, I'm happy they took a flyer. And I'm happy they're willing to move on from experiments that don't work, and the fact that Framiel Reyes is already being DFA'd. That didn't work out. They didn't have a lot tied up into it. It let them cast off from it early, and they're not going to stay tied up to a decision that blatantly was not working out. We'll see what happens moving forward. We'll see how quickly James McArthur makes his big league debut for the Royals. I don't know how quickly that'll be, but the fact that he's already on the 40-man makes me think he is an option to come up sooner rather than later. We'll take our first time out here on Mike Up. Coming next, we recap the weekend with our weekend takeaways and fails. Time for weekend takeaways and fails here on Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW. And for me, it's a very simple one. I don't watch a lot of NBA basketball. It's just not my thing. I kind of like hoops. I pay attention a little bit, but overall, it is what it is. It's entertaining, but I'm not. If I'm a hoops guy, it's a college hoops guy. I say it's a Chicago Bulls hat is on my head. I do watch the Bulls when they're on, and they make me quite sad, like every other sports team I follow. But one thing I noticed while I was briefly watching the Suns and Nuggets last night was when Nikola Jokic was in the crowd trying to get a ball back, and Matt Ishbia flopped. The owner of the Suns flopped. I'm not judging the man. I think that whole situation overblown. I think Ishbia should be given the ball back. I think Nikola Jokic should have maybe just not worried about getting the ball back that fast. The play wasn't going to go on any quickly there, brother. But the fact of the matter is, I watched a grown man who apparently owns an NBA franchise take the lightest of shoves from Nikola Jokic and flopped like Marcus Smart and Dylan Brooks combined. It was the funniest thing. I don't know whether to call it a takeaway or a fail. It's kind of both. But it was rather entertaining. And Ishbia sent out a statement earlier today, a tweet saying hopes no one is suspended. Yeah, that's right. That's spoken like a man who knows he flopped in that situation. Hilarious. Objectively hilarious content from the NBA playoffs last night. And it wasn't even on the court action. It was just side adjacent to the court action. We'll take another timeout when we come back. Michael Peterson of Bolts of the Blue will join us to talk all things Chargers. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. I thank you all for joining me this afternoon. Fulton Cast here with you, riding solo as Jake LeBon has the day off. And right now, we spend so much time talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, but it's time to begin Jake and I's look around the AFC West as rookie minicamps kick up across the NFL. The Chiefs rookie minicamp was last weekend. It just finalized, wrapping up in it today. But this weekend's rookie minicamp for other members of the AFC West. We begin our look with the Los Angeles Chargers as we welcome in on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Our good friend Michael Peterson covers the Chargers for Bolts from the Blue, the SB Nation site of the Los Angeles Chargers. You can follow Michael on Twitter at Zone Tracks. And Michael, I guess where things have to start, the NFL offseason flowing ever so much underway. The Chargers have made their different moves. Just what's the feelings and the vibes around the Chargers kind of going into the beginning of the offseason for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think like most off seasons, the hype is up there, but I think we got to be cautious with this because it does seem like every off season there is hype, right, for the Chargers, even when they're not too hyped. People call them a dark horse, and then when they have legitimate hype, sometimes the season doesn't necessarily go the way they would have liked it. Obviously just barely missing the playoff 2 years ago, the way the playoffs ended this past season. But overall, I mean, this team lost some good players. They've made some good re-signings. The free agents that they've brought in are impact players. And overall, I think it is going to be another year similar to the 2022 season where they do feel like they have a strong chance of potentially dethroning the Chiefs. But again, until that happens, this is the Chiefs division. But overall, I think things are about as positive as you can make them for the Chargers heading into the offseason.
You're very much right, Michael, and I feel it is. Yeah, a lot of times Chargers seem to make some good moves in the offseason, and something comes around to unravel it. But even I got to say, from not necessarily an outsider's perspective, from a different side perspective, from the Chiefs side of it, I have liked what the Chargers have done this offseason. Let's start with a big coaching move that they made this offseason. They moved on from offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi and have brought in a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. Just how do you feel that might translate to this offense? And I think more important than anything else, how does this impact Justin Herbert going into this season?
Yeah, I think this is possibly the best move that the Chargers have made because over the first two seasons with Joe Lombardi, I know in their first season together, Justin Herbert throws for over 5,000 yards and has a really good season. And, the excitement from that kind of goes over to 2022. But all of a sudden, even despite the plethora of injuries, on offense, Joe Lombardi was running an offense that seemed like, if everything went perfect on the majority of their plays, you're only getting about 6 to 9 yards. It just was an abysmal offense to watch. It was very boring, especially considering who you had at quarterback. Everyone said the whole year, we've got to open it up. You got to start throwing it over the top. And again, injuries kind of hurt that, but there are ways to kind of get around that as well. So to move on from Joe Lombardi to get Kellen Moore, who was successful for quite a few years with the Cowboys, just ultimately him and Mike McCarthy wanted to have different, they had philosophical differences. So they decided to split. Does not mean that Kellen Moore wasn't getting the job done. McCarthy just wanted to go a different direction. So enter Moore into Los Angeles, where everyone knows he's going to open up this offense, not only vertically to show off what Justin Herbert can do, but open up the run game as well. The Chargers have been one of the worst rushing attacks in the NFL over the last couple of years, pretty much behind Austin Eckler. There is no other running back that can really affect this offense at all. But in general, the run game scheme wasn't that great, actually. So if anything, we kind of thought they were going to bring in a running back, but it looks like if Kellen Moore can come in, design a better system that runs more fluidly through its players, I think they open that as well. Overall, though, very much positive on the addition of Kellen Moore.
I got to say, I'm with you on adding Kellen Moore might have been the best and biggest move the Chargers have made this offseason. And the way the offense will evolve does fascinate me for perspective of what I'm going to have to see when the Chiefs take on the Chargers this year. Another piece of how this offense can change up, the first round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers this year, a guy that I really liked, and as a KU football fan, saw him do a lot of dangerous things against my favorite college football team. Quentin Johnston is an LA Charger. How do you first think he fits in alongside Mike Williams and Keenan Allen? And what do you think is the potential of that trio if all three can stay healthy in this new potential offense for the Chargers with Justin Herbert and that cannon of an arm he has?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people immediately go, oh, well, Quentin Johnston's just another Mike Williams clone, another big body, receiver, jump ball type guy. But I'll tell you right now, Quentin Johnston really isn't all that similar, sizable, sure. But when he's catching deep balls. He's not going up and plucking them out of the sky in between two defenders. This is a guy who wants to take the top off the defense. If anything, he's got enough nuance in his route running where he knows how to attack a blind spot of a defender and be able to get open deep. And what he can bring to this offense is what they were missing last year when Jalen Guyton, who was arguably their only speed threat a year ago, got hurt for the whole season. They didn't have anyone to take any pressure off, the back end of a defense or really take that much pressure off either Williams or Allen. And then obviously you add in the fact that both of those players were injured throughout the year. It caused a lot of problems for this offense. One other area where this offense needs to get better was yards after the catch. I think if you look at any of the top offenses in the NFL, including the Chiefs, their coaches know how to scheme players open where a 5-yard catch down the field turns into 10, 15. They make it easy on their players. And this is something the Chargers really did not know how to do. Basically what Joe Lombardi was doing last year was a lot of slants, flats, a lot of curls, a lot of stuff that, sure, they get little chunks down the field, but there was no yards at the catch opportunity. So what Quentin Johnston brings is arguably the best player in gaining yards after the catch a year ago. And hopefully he's able to kind of open up the offense that way. If you guys remember, Tyrell Williams, kind of obscure name a couple of years ago for the Chargers, was that type of guy, this long strider, 4-3 speed. Hopefully he's able to bring something like that to offense, really change the variety that Moore is going to put out this season.
The other part of this offense, and you spoke about it a little bit, is trying to get the run game going for the Chargers. And I know we're in a day and age where we understand, kind of passing is what makes the world go round, but a good run game complement is still important for some of the best teams in the NFL. Austin Ekeler is just a fantastic do-it-all back for you guys. I'm envious of how great of a player he truly is and everything he can do. First things before the kind of on the field stuff, any updates on any of the off the field stuff? There's, was the rumblings of the extension issues and then a trade request and thoughts moving on. Any news or notes or your thoughts on kind of the offseason rumblings surrounding Austin Ekeler and his future with the Los Angeles Chargers?
Yeah, surprisingly, there was nothing that came up during the NFL draft. Just with the way things were quiet heading into the weekend, you thought potentially if there was going to get a deal done to trade him, it would have involved something inside the draft, but things stayed really quiet, and they're still quiet to this day. The last, few public appearances that Austin Ekeler made, he basically just said, "Look, I'm trying to get more money. I believe I deserve to get paid more for what I've done over the last few seasons." But worst case scenario is I do go back to the Chargers. I play on my final year of this contract, and I become a free agent, after this next year. So it doesn't seem like he's threatening or showing anyone that he may hold out, that he may play hardball. It really does sound like, he just kind of accepts that nothing's getting done ahead of this next season, and I'll go play with the team that I'm most comfortable with, where I know I can go out and produce very well, and then we'll see what happens next year. And again, I believe he deserves more money as well. It's just unfortunate that his position has been so devalued in the NFL over the last decade, where it's tough to get double-digit money for a running back who isn't a Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara type player, even though Ekeler has kind of been that type of player. He's just, a former undrafted player as well. These other guys were first and second round picks. So it's very, very tough, but overall, it just sounds like he will come back and make the best of it if a deal can't get done.
On the field last season, Ekeler, 107 receptions as a running back, just absolutely kind of absurd numbers. We talked about what Kellen Moore can do and what he should do for Justin Herbert. We've spoken a little bit on the run game, but how do you think that Austin Ekeler could benefit from Kellen Moore coming in and modifying the offense a little bit? And what should us as Chiefs fans, when the little bit of the two games that we're going to end up seeing the Chargers, or hopefully just two, and not have to face you guys in the playoffs as well, because beating a team or facing a team 3 times is very difficult. What do you think Chiefs fans can expect to see from this offense? And how do you think Kellen Moore might affect the run game and what he'll add to the run game behind Austin Ekeler, a terrific do-it-all back for the Chargers?
Yeah, so I think one of the best years of offense the Chargers had recently was when Melvin Gordon was still on the team, and the offensive coordinator at the time, I believe it was Ken Wisenhunt, was putting Ekeler and Melvin Gordon out on the field at the same time. And it was, since Ekeler didn't have to be full-time in the backfield, since they had another competent back, he was able to go in the slot out wide. It was a year where I want to say he fell 3 yards short of 1,000 receiving yards. I want to say 2018, 2019 had a pretty decent year on the ground as well. But Kellen, coming off working with a team that had both Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, being able to use those guys around the formation, mainly Pollard being more of a receiving type back as well, moving in the slot and around the offensive formation. If Kellen Moore can find one of the running backs on this roster who can play the best complement role to Ekeler, whether that's Josh Kelly, fourth-round pick last year, Isaiah Spiller, who was a good back in the SEC, then I believe he can truly kind of move Eckler around and show that he doesn't have to spend all this time and find all this production out of the backfield. Putting him in the slot and getting him on a linebacker would be absolutely huge. Overall, in terms of this run game, I think you're going to find him being able to dress up formations at a lot more consistent rate where defenses won't be able to key on the Chargers as much. Hopefully that comes with a healthy offensive line as well. And then Kellen Moore, just like the Cowboys, they kind of like to use multiple tight ends. So if the Chargers can find a way to get Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, Stone Smart's a free agent from last year, undrafted, who kind of saw some time late last year. If he can find a good pair in that group to kind of help, again, dress up this offense and help open up the run game as well, I think you're going to see a lot more success. So I think, if anything, the biggest thing is variety, dressing up, making things look the same but still be quite different, way more than Joe Lombardi was able to do for the last 2 years.
Michael Peterson is my guest on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Michael covers the Chargers for Bolts from the Blue, the Los Angeles Chargers SB Nation site. You can follow Michael on Twitter at Zone Tracks. Moving to the defensive side, Michael, the biggest thing, at least from what I've seen from the Chargers, was their difficulty partly of last year stopping the run. That seems to have been an issue the past couple of years. They ended up drafting, and I'm going to probably butcher the poor young man's name, Tuli Tupilotu, to try and probably help with that defensive line. Just what have you seen the Chargers try and move with the defensive line this year, and what steps have they made to improve their run defense going into this season?
Yeah, so they definitely added Tuipulotu in the second round. In the sixth round, they added former Boise State defensive tackle Scott Matlock. But just in general, besides adding new names, that group just has to stay healthy. I mean, if you're going to talk about, any injury or any position on the Chargers that really got affected by that injury bug, was the interior of the defensive line. I know starters, Austin Johnson, who was a free agent pickup last year, he missed most of the season. Sebastian Joseph Day, the other starter, I know missed a couple of games. Behind them, they had fifth-round nose tackle Otito Ogbonia that they drafted out of UCLA. He lasted about half the season and then missed the rest with an injury. And then after them, it was Morgan Fox, who's more of a pass rusher along the interior. But that position got so shredded that there was 1 week the Chargers went out and signed 2 defensive tackles off the street to come in and not just provide depth, but potentially have to play. So if anything, that's going to help this run defense stay better is cohesiveness and being healthy and being able to play together for week in and week out. Surely is going to help them. Tuipulotu, again, is an edge rusher, but also, a big body guy, 6'3", 266 plus pounds, was listed at 290 playing edge rusher for USC, but more than likely he's not going to play that big. But hopefully he helps round out the edge rushers as well, because when you didn't have Joey Bosa for 12 games and it was just a 31-year-old Khalil Mack, you weren't getting much out of both sides of that defensive front, just kind of the one. And Chris Rump's a little bit too undersized to help play the run. But overall, just health, cohesiveness, being able to play and keep some consistency, I believe will help that run defense.
Health, I think, is a good thing to point out for this Chargers defense. And going down from the kind of the trenches to the back half and the secondary here, injuries affected how good that secondary could be as well, including only getting 5 games out of what I would call probably one of the biggest acquisitions last offseason. And J.C. Jackson only played 5 games, a guy that I was honestly for Kansas City to try and take a swing at. I think he's just such a talented player. If the secondary can stay healthy, what do you think kind of strides they can make in year 2 with hopefully J.C. Jackson being healthy, with Asante Samuel Jr. back there? What do you think of the Chargers secondary and how it can help the defense as well if they can also get lucky on the injury bug this season?
Yeah, so the secondary definitely took some strides towards the end of last season and played much, much better. Asante Samuel Jr. obviously had a big end to the year with 3 picks in the first quarter of the playoff game. Michael Davis, who did not start the year as a starter because they signed J.C. Jackson, came on strong when Jackson got hurt and played some of the best ball of his life, honestly. And then Bryce Callahan, who unfortunately is still a free agent, had one of his best years as well, led the team with 3 interceptions during the regular season. And then on the back end, of course, you have everything Derwin James. But previous starting free safety Nasir Adderley actually was a free agent and then chose to retire at such a young age. So they have a little bit of a hole at free safety. The guys they have behind them, Alohi Gilman, Mark Webb, are more of a traditional strong safety role, no true center fielder, which is kind of why people are throwing out John Johnson as a potential free agent pickup there. But I think overall, the ceiling of this defensive back group, I think, will rely on when J.C. Jackson comes back, because they're not entirely sure he'll make it back in time for the start of the regular season. And if he does come back, what form of Jackson are we going to get? Because we saw the guy who had 17 picks over the last 2 seasons prior to 2022. And then he comes in and he has a little bit of an ankle issue. They have a cleanup surgery. They say it's not a new injury, but he should be fine. Well, he kind of had a slow start. He played 5 games, but in those 5 games, he looked like a completely different player. He was getting beat way too often. He just looked uncomfortable. He was nowhere near to getting an interception through any of those games. It was very, very off-putting and a little just unusual to see him go from who he was, 17 picks in 2 years, to a guy who was letting up touchdowns left and right, big gains left and right against the Chiefs, against the Broncos, against the Seahawks in the game. He ended up getting hurt. And to add salt in the wound, he got hurt on a play where he allowed a touchdown. I mean, it was just such an unideal, inconvenient year for Jackson that if he can come back and return to form when he was with the Patriots, I think, the sky is the limit, but it's all going to come down to what kind of Jackson we get when he returns.
Just a few more questions here for Michael Peterson, joining me on our Filling Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Michael covers the Chargers for Bolts from the Blue, the SB Nation site for the LA Chargers. You can follow Michael on Twitter at Zone Tracks. All right, Michael, there's a lot of offseason. We're only in the second week of May, and football does not begin for a long while. Still a lot of time for something to be done. But is there anything up to this point that you are surprised the Chargers haven't done this offseason that you thought they would have done? Whether it's a signing, an announcement, anything like that. Just, is there anything the Chargers haven't done or haven't addressed enough that you were kind of surprised they haven't done thus far?
There's nothing I would say that's super large that stands out, but there are a couple things. Going through the draft this past weekend, we had our 7th edition of our live draft show where we kind of watch it with fans and kind of react with them at the same time. And what was weird about this year was each pick that came was the right process, but everyone on stream, at least with me, our reactions were never like, this is an amazing pick, we can't believe he fell to us. There wasn't any huge excitement. It was the right position, right? A receiver, an edge rusher. But there was always a different player still on the board that we felt that they could have got. Whether it was, Quentin Johnston, well, a lot of people wanted Zay Flowers as a Tyreek Hill-esque type player, right? In the 3rd round, Deion Henley, when Trenton Simpson from Clemson was still on the board, at most people's linebacker 1 for the most part. And then they took another guy who might seem to be undersized. So it's kind of stuff like that. And then towards the end of the draft, they took an offensive lineman in the 5th round where we don't need a starter at offensive line, but they took a guy that they thought they could develop. And then their final pick was Max Duggan, TCU quarterback, which kind of made sense when they realized they took 2 other TCU quarterbacks. But that's a pick on a guy that could potentially be your 3rd quarterback heading into the season when there were other needs such as running back and tight end. Those rooms aren't super solid right now. Like we said, no one's behind Eckler. They don't have a true and try, well-rounded tight end. So there were other good running backs on the board in the 7th. I believe Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion, the really athletic tight end there, was available. And they decided against it. So coming away from the draft, yes, they nailed a lot of the right positions. But overall, there are still some holes that leave the roster kind of looking, well, this is quite questionable. And unless Kellen Moore can scheme it much better, there's a hole here at running back. There's a little bit of a hole here at tight end. And you don't want to put that need off a year if you don't have to. So just kind of like underwhelming decisions like that. Right process, just a lot of the execution just seems to be lacking, I guess.
All right, Michael, my final 2 questions for you. My 2 for the road here. First things first, and we're going to take injuries out of the equation, so we're going to assume everyone's fully healthy because it's not even fun to project injuries at this point.
Right.
Who do you think leads the Chargers in receiving yards this year?
That's a great question because it definitely with QJ coming in, kind of murks that up. If I had to say, I would probably say Mike Williams. I think when he's being utilized correctly, not just as a deep ball, go up and get it, highlight reel type player, when they're able to get him open in the intermediate, sometimes even in the short, he's able to stick a foot in the ground, make a guy miss, and he's a little underrated after the catch. I just don't think he's ever given that much of an opportunity. But even 2 seasons ago, when he had his career best year in receiving yards and did lead the team in receiving yards, Joe Lombardi utilized him correctly, and it was really cool to see him be much more of a complete wide receiver as opposed to just a deep ball guy. Keenan Allen's always a safe bet. He's going to catch more passes than Mike Williams, but if they aren't able to do a right scheme, if he's just catching short slants, hooks, and stuff like that, no yards after the catch, Mike Williams is going to surpass him really quickly with, 1 catch could be 6 of Keenan Allen. over the course of a week. So I think my money's on Mike Williams, but with QJ and his skill set, he's a dark horse as well.
Mike Williams is probably someone I would have leaned on too, but just not a shortage of some good options there for the Chargers and their receiving core. My final question for you, Chiefs-Chargers has kind of become appointment television, especially since Justin Herbert has bursted onto the scene as a battle between two of the best young quarterbacks in the AFC West. We got the schedule release coming up this week, but if you had to make a guess, what week do you think we get our first Chargers-Chiefs matchup this year? And is it played at SoFi or Arrowhead first?
That's a great question. And I think I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it feels like the Chargers have played the Chiefs either week 1 or week 2, at least for the last 4 or 5 years in a row, maybe even before that. So if I had to guess, I'd say week 2, and it'd be at Arrowhead. I think that sounds really good. And, despite the Chargers not having won a ton of games in recent memory, some people wouldn't call it a rivalry anymore. But these games, like you said, it is appointment television. The games are always close. It's a bummer that the Chargers are always up early and seem to be playing very, very well. And then the Chiefs remember that they're the Chiefs and come back and win it at the end. But overall, you're right. No matter how the game, the results have been over the last 5 years, these games have become some of the most watchable and some really classic games over that span.
Michael, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, my friend. Have yourself a good rest of the day and a good rest of the offseason. And we'll chat again when the Chiefs and Chargers get set to lock up horns coming up later on this year.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Michael Peterson from Bolts from the Blue on our Fleming Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Always a pleasure to get a little bit of an inside look behind enemy lines on some opponents in the AFC West. That'll do it for the noon hour of Mic'd Up. Coming at the 1 o'clock hour, we're going to take a look at the Chiefs offensive line and the Royals hitting here on Mic'd Up. Welcome into hour number 2 of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, riding solo this afternoon. Jake LeBon has the day off. He will be back with us tomorrow. So for now, it's just me getting to, run the whole asylum, which is kind of fun. I'm just going to do what I want. I can talk about whatever I want. Don't have to technically run by any topics with anybody. It's just whatever I feel like discussing today is what we get to discuss. The absolution of power also does, take you over absolutely. So far, I've been able to avoid getting drunk on the power, but who knows? If Jake keeps this up at some point, I might get a little too big for my britches. But so far, we're fine. We're understanding our place in the order. I want to thank Michael Peterson again for coming on at the bottom of last hour of Bolts from the Blue to talk all things Chargers, getting us a little look early on behind enemy lines as we head into rookie minicamp. He thinks Mike Williams, if everyone's healthy, could potentially lead the team in receiving. That, honestly, I think is a good pick. And I'm also fascinated to see when the Chiefs and Chargers do play first this year. Or week 2 last year kicked off Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. There was that whole thing, the NFL draft made a big deal of, Chiefs and Chargers being on stage to announce that. I am fascinated to see how quickly Chiefs and Chargers play this year. Who knows? Maybe Chiefs and Chargers is the opening game on Thursday for the Chiefs defending their Super Bowl title. Maybe the Chargers come to town. That would be interesting. Fascinating. I think. No. I don't know. Schedule release is supposed to happen this week. I believe Thursday is when the schedule release is supposed to happen, which is a funny coincidence considering we have a short show Thursday. Spoiler alert for the week's programming. The Royals have a day game with a 1:10 first pitch coming up on Thursday. So Jake and I, once again, only have a 20-minute program of Mic'd Up coming up on Thursday. So the NFL just released their schedule that day. Well, Jake and I will just break it down on Friday, which means that's gonna be interesting. But sometimes the NFL's decisions on how they do things does not work out with what we want to do. Who knows? It's up to them. The NFL gets to do whatever they want. Coming up this hour on Mic'd Up, I'm going to look at the flexibility with the Chiefs offensive line. That is a question that's been stirring a bit more in my head, prompted by some people a lot smarter than me. And figuring what the Chiefs might do with that offensive line flexibility. We're going to look at the Royals' offense and how much some hitters have really improved as of late. How, more importantly, the exact type of hitter and the certain guys that are improving is a really good sign for this team going forward. It means that they can just get a few more things ironed out. This team actually really could not be a cellar dweller if a few other things could be worked out and they could dig themselves out of a hole. Then, of course, we have Everyone Loves the List today. Today's the 9-year anniversary of the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft. So Kyle Manthey is going to join me as we look back on the biggest first-round busts from the 2014 NFL Draft. Because, folks, we need to remember how bad some of those first-round picks were. There were some good ones. There were some really good ones in the first round of 2014. There was also some truly horrendous ones. We'll look at that coming up today as well. You can join in, as always, on the show on the text line, 785-272-9429. You can give us a shout on our Fully in Place Wine and Spirits phone line, 785-272-9429. You can also jump in on the comment section of our YouTube live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. We would appreciate if you would subscribe. We passed over 250 recently. We are all very, very happy and just so delighted that so many of you have subscribed to the channel. And then you can jump in as you watch the live stream in the comment section as well. But we're going to begin by looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that instills in us all a lot more happiness than that other team in Kansas City. And Jake and I talked a little bit last week about what Donovan Smith being signed by the Chiefs could mean for the offensive line. But I myself have thought about this a little bit more. And moreover, some people a lot smarter than me, including our very good friend Matt Derrick, who we will talk to tomorrow coming up on Mic'd Up, brought up when he was on 580 Sports Talk at the end of last week. The Chiefs' offensive line, with the addition of Donovan Smith, gives them a lot of flexibility, not just for this year, but for their multi-year planning. And it's something I don't think we've discussed enough about how adding Donovan Smith actually means what we'll be doing. Because for the Chiefs, when they signed Juwan Taylor, We all thought, and the idea was, and Brett spoke about it, that Juwan would move to the left side. Juwan would be the team's new left tackle, and they would just need to find a new right tackle, whether that be Lucas Niang, Darian Kennard, or as we've now discovered, new draft pick Juan Morris. Then the Chiefs signed Donovan Smith, a perennial left tackle, and usually a pretty good one at that. Dealt with some injuries, has kind of fallen off a little bit, but overall, fairly good at left tackle. And that brought up a lot of questions, and we broke some of them down. Would Smith be the starter at left tackle? Does that mean Juwan Taylor has to be at right? Will the Chiefs be patient? I don't know. But that is where the Juwan Taylor signing also becomes so fascinating, because when the Chiefs signed Juwan Taylor, it was not that he had to be left tackle. This was different than the Orlando Brown situation, where when he was traded for, it was because Orlando Brown wanted to be a left tackle. Where, he said explicitly, I want to play on the left side, only play me on the left side. Juwan Taylor's different. Juwan Taylor's always been a right tackle, and he's been fine with playing right tackle, and he's played as an above average right tackle. So that does technically mean with Juwan Taylor in Kansas City, yes, the original idea might have been for him to play on the left side, but he could potentially play on the right and just stay on the right, because Juwan Taylor's done that, and he had no outwardly desires to move sides. The Chiefs might have presented that idea, and Juwan Taylor might have signed off on that idea, but it isn't like he had been requesting and asking for it and begging and thinking that's where he needed to be, which means the flexibility that signing offers you means the Chiefs can now do a lot of different things. And what I want to discuss is those different options, because let's say Juwan Taylor stays on the right side. Let's say either because the Chiefs just don't want to attempt the experiment, or because, whatever reasons they might be, the Chiefs leave Juwan Taylor on the right side. And so Donovan Smith is your 1-year left tackle. Then we go into, all right, what is the long-term plan at left tackle? And the Chiefs have some options, because the options become this. Next season, so 2024, you could try moving Juwan Taylor again. That's kind of my lowest option, because I think if you're going to moving him sooner rather than later gives you the most time to work with the transition on his current contract. That's what I think. But no matter what, that is an option. Option 2, we keep talking about Juan Morris as a right tackle. Who's to say the Chiefs don't view him as potentially a left tackle? Maybe Juan Morris, if they think they can get his fundamentals sorted out, becomes the Chiefs' long-term solution at left tackle. That is an option. Or the other option as well, the Chiefs draft a left tackle next year. And going with a rookie left tackle is always dangerous. And where the Chiefs pick, it's often dangerous as well, because usually it means the Chiefs are picking at the back part of the draft where there are not often the most premier players, or is a situation to where, they have to execute some sorts of trades to really get the kind of player that they want. But I don't know. But then I look at the 2024 left tackles, and it's not great, because the current free agent left tackles are all older. Currently, as of right now, your 2024 free agent left tackles would be Tyron Smith, Dwayne Brown, Donovan Smith, the Kansas City Chief now, and Cornelius Lucas. The youngest would be Smith, who at the time would be, close to 31. But you have the 39-year-old Brown, the 33-year-old Smith, and the 33-year-old Cornelius Lucas. So I don't think the plan would be then to just get a new free agent left tackle next year. I have to imagine the idea is, if Donovan Smith holds down the left side this year, if the thought is Donovan Smith is going to be a left tackle this season, if that's what his job is going to be, I have to imagine that might actually just mean the Chiefs are either going to go with Juan Morris as the left tackle starting next season, or the Chiefs might just draft on the left tackle. And that is fascinating to me, because Brett Veach spoke so much this offseason about wanting to get a long-term solution at left tackle done. That was his goal. and I'm not putting words in his mouth, that's what Brett Veach said, was the goal was to get a long-term solution figured out for left tackle this offseason. That's why they didn't just want to keep doing these one-year deals with Orlando Brown if he wasn't going to be the long-term solution. They did not want to keep hitting that revolving door. That's why Jawaan Taylor being signed and maybe moving to the left side felt like the answer. But if that's not the case, and Taylor does stick on the right, well, then, Brett Veach, you don't have your long-term solution at left tackle. The idea that you presented with, and listen, I'm not saying his ideas can't change, that his thoughts can't change. That can happen, and that is okay. I would rather my team and the team that I follow and the team that I cover are willing to admit, hey, we need to change your ideas. We need to kind of call an audible on the play. Then sit and feel like they're confined or constrained to a move. The Chiefs not feeling like they are restricted to just Jawaan Taylor at left tackle is a good thing. And we'll hear from Andy Reid, and he has some thoughts on the left tackle situation and what the Chiefs might do at that spot coming up this season. But I am just fascinated by the fact that Brett Veach said the goal was we want a long-term left tackle this offseason. And the fact of the matter is, if Jawaan Taylor moves to right, it will not move, but stays at right, and Donovan Smith is your left tackle this year, you technically have not accomplished that. Because, and I will openly admit, I would disagree if the idea is, well, Jawaan Taylor plays at right tackle this year and he moves to the left next year. Jawaan Taylor's contract is structured in such that after 3 years, the Chiefs can get out. Which to me means if your idea is that he is your left tackle, then move him now. See what you have. So then if you need to make a second extension, you know what you're working with and you have more data to be collected. Rather than we're going to keep him at right for 1 year, because then what if he does struggle in year one, but it's great in year two? Well, then you're kind of at a weird spot for an extension, right back in that nebulous territory of extensions versus franchise tags and what have you. But that's just the big thing looking at this is the flexibility of these signings and the flexibility of this offensive line and these tackles is just fascinating for what the Chiefs try and do. Because also, as much as Brett Veach says, the idea is to get a long-term left tackle done, maybe he does view that the idea is just shore up one side of the tackles and go from there. That maybe just instead of having a stalwart left tackle, they have a stalwart right tackle and they make the left side work the best they can. The Chiefs have done that before. They did it with Mitchell Schwartz, and he was a great right tackle. Amazing. The Chiefs had the right side locked down. So I'm just fascinated by what they do and what the plan might be because it can be so different and so complex and so interesting for what they can do with this offensive line because it looks like the plan is changing, which I think is always an indicator of how great of an organization, or at least how properly run from the top, the Chiefs can be, is their willingness to adapt. Their willingness to say, this idea or this plan isn't working, or not really isn't working, but a different plan has now arisen or a different thought process has arisen, and this plan could work. Let's try it. And I think the Chiefs are going to go from their original plan that Jawaan Taylor was going to move to the left side and play long-term left tackle. And I think they're scrapping it, which makes me intrigued at what the next step in the next move is. What's the next chess piece to move? Because I think Donovan Smith can be a good one-year rental at left tackle. As I said on Friday, he will be as good as Orlando Brown. The full contract details still have not been released for Donovan Smith. We're still waiting for those numbers to come out. We know it is an upwards of $9 million deal. We do not know what the cap hit is or what those incentives are. But I think, you have a guy, 29 years old, will turn 30 here in a matter of weeks. It's not the worst option to have protecting the blind side of Patrick Mahomes, and just the Chiefs' willingness to be flexible and to be different. I just always find so fascinating and so refreshing because they're willing to just say, hey, we're going to try something different. This is different than our original plan. We'll see how it works. Overall, as I've said numerous times, I feel like the Chiefs have earned that benefit of the doubt. They have earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to making moves and figuring things out and adapting on the fly, because they're a championship winning organization. They've won 2 Super Bowls under Andy Reid and Brett Veach. That's the fact of the matter. And so I think until they, kind of show some faults or some chinks in the armor, you have to imagine that the Chiefs will be able to figure out a way to keep things going, keep things rolling, and make it work down the line. We're going to take a time out here on Mic'd Up. Coming up next, time for Everyone Loves the List, the worst first-round busts of the 2024 NFL Draft. Time for Everyone Loves the List here on Mic'd Up as I bring in Kyle Manthe, who, Kyle, I'm not a man who usually tells people what to do, but if you could adjust the camera ever so slightly. There you go, buddy. We need you somewhat on camera still for an on-camera segment. Other times, that's fair. It can sit where it wants to be. I didn't need the people, maybe, the people do like seeing you and do like you being around. I hope you know that. The people do like Kyle Manthe being a part of the show.
That's much appreciated to hear. And it's also reasonable to expect the camera to not be pointing at the wall or a ceiling or whatever it was pointed at.
I was pointed at the, commercial machine. Who knows? Everyone listens to this today. Kyle, worst your draft picks from the 2014 NFL Draft. Today is the 9 years to the date anniversary of the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft that had some banger of picks in it. Some of those picks from the first round that were good include Khalil Mack, Odell Beckham Jr., Aaron Donald was a part of that. Some good players. There's also some really bad ones in there. So Kyle, our list today, worst bust from the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft. Who's your number 4 bust?
My number 4, we're going to go back to All Reliable. The New York Jets selected Calvin Pryor, number 18 overall. He lasted 3 seasons. He did get over 100. He got 132 career tackles, a couple interceptions. So he did play football for 3 years, but only 3 years out of a first-round pick. Not great.
Not at all. Number 4 for me could be a controversial pick to include on the list, but because of his draft position and what he needed to do versus what he did, I don't think 1 year can absolve him from being a bust. It's Blake Bortles. Number 3 overall pick. Yes, he went 10-6 and they got to the playoffs in one of his years in Jacksonville. Every other year stunk. He had 24 wins in Jacksonville. He's basically out of the league at this point. He was a 3rd overall pick as a quarterback. Those are supposed to be franchise transcending players. I love Blake. He's very fun. He's definitely a bust given his draft spot, but because of the success he did have, he only gets to be number 4 for me.
Number 3 for me, another top 3 pick, Greg Robinson. He went number 2 to the Rams. He only lasted until 2019, taking over. Khalil Mack went 3 picks after him. He was also, there was 4 tackles taken in the first round. He was by far the worst. He's the only one that didn't make a Pro Bowl and is currently not still playing. So he's number 3 for me.
That's very fair. Number 3 for me, the number 8 overall pick to Cleveland, Justin Gilbert, was out of football within 2 years. Did nothing. I don't even have bits for this. He just wasn't good. So Justin Gilbert.
I think I'm going to take your number 1 at number 2. For me, number 2, Johnny Manziel. He played more football than Justin Gilbert. He lasted a little longer, but 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions for his career. Not great for the number 22 overall pick.
No.
Johnny football, though.
Not at all. Number 2 for me, Greg Robinson, offensive tackle for the Rams. You outlined it. You're number 2 overall pick, and you're already out of football by 2019. That's not good. That's not helpful. It's not.
Number 1 for me, really just a banger draft for the Browns. Justin Gilbert, number 8 overall. If you can get him and Johnny Manziel, they were clearly onto something there. Started 3 games in his career, only 36 career tackles. Not great for number 8 overall.
Number 1 for me is very simple. It is Johnny football. And listen, Johnny Manziel, there were some other extenuating factors for part of the things that had to go on with him. The fact of the matter is, he was a first-round quarterback pick. First-round pick as a quarterback at 22 overall. He played 2 seasons. He played 14 games. That's it. Like, the Browns got nothing for Johnny Manziel, and that was the simple case of what it was. So that is our Everyone Loves the List today. Chime in with your thoughts on the text line as well. We'll take a time out. We'll take a look at the Royals hitters when we come back. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you as we move into the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. Everyone loves the list today was the biggest first-round bust from the 2014 NFL Draft. Do you have any thoughts on that, or any thoughts in general? And, of course, chime in on the text line, 785-272-9429, or join me in the comment section on our YouTube live stream. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And you can let me know your thoughts as well. We're going to hear from Andy Reid coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. He had some interesting thoughts about the rookies, how they've been doing, and what he thinks will happen with the offensive line, at least to begin OTAs and how the beginning of the offseason programs will go. But here in the 1 o'clock hour, to wrap things up in this hour, we're going to go back to our good friends, the Kansas City Royals. And I call them good friends. You guys might call them mortal enemies, and I wouldn't blame you. But I want to look at something positive for the Royals. And because I think when positive things happen, we should speak about positive things. That's not just a Royals thing. That's a life thing. It is more fun to talk about the positives in life than the negatives. So when something is positive, we should try to bring it to the forefront to talk about the good things and the positive energy. It's just, in my opinion, and I'm just one man, it's one man's opinion, is the better way to look at things. And it's a little more fun, a little bit more of a more entertaining way to look at things. So for the Royals, I think we all have noticed the offense is kind of heating up. And it goes longer. It actually goes back farther than these 6 games. But I want to look at these 6 games specifically at home. They've done a few better things before that. But this stretch is really when the offense is taken off. And this is what I mean. This is the numbers of the offense the last 6 games. 7, 6, 10, 8, 4, 5. That is nearly 7 runs a game, which normally would get you darn near a 6-game winning streak. But when your pitching staff's giving up 7 runs a game, well, you run into 2 and 4. It happens. It sucks. It stinks, and I'm very unhappy about it, but it is what it is. But there's something more important to me than just the raw run totals and some of the raw numbers. As much as I talked about, a bigger worry for the pitching is not just that it is bad, but it is the young guys that are struggling. On the offensive part of the game, it's not just that the offense is picking up. Y'all, it's the kids are playing well. A veteran, 6 of these being youngsters. Salvador Perez, El Capitan, is hitting like crazy. He's slashing 350, 435, 650 with a pair of home runs in the last 6 games, including one he hit 462 feet yesterday, which is the longest home run of his career. It's awesome. Salvador Perez is being Salvador Perez, which is helpful, which is nice. You need a good veteran presence helping out your team. But then there's the more important part. Vinny Pasquantino, our big old friend Vinny. He's slashing 261, 357, 522. That's batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, in that order. He has 1 home run, but 6 runs driven in and 4 walks in his last 6 games. The batting average, a little bit lower than we're used to with Vinny, but overall, he's continuing to absolutely rake, and that is such a good sign for the future. But we knew that. We know Vinny's hitting well. He's been the best hitter on the team this year. But these other 5, this is the sign the Royals might actually have something of a core for the next few seasons, which means if you can solve the other problems, which I'm not saying they will solve them easily, they are difficult. They are digging themselves out of a bottomless pit with pitching that got set back by the previous regime. They are trying to, dig out, but it's hard. But offensively, these 5 guys will give me hope that, if they could maybe figure out something to get the pitching truly average, they could start winning a lot of ball games. Bobby Witt Jr., prodigal son at short. 292, 320, 667 slugging percentage his last 6 games. He has a pair of home runs, 1 double, a triple, has driven in 5 over this 6-game stretch. MJ Melendez, who was off to a rough start of the year, really couldn't figure out his swing and missing far too much, striking out far too much. MJ Melendez, 304, 333, 522 slash with a home run and a pair of doubles over his last 6 games. And that's great. But we know MJ and Bobby can be good. We just know they were underperforming. This is just, these guys are now kind of doing what we thought. It's nice to see them get hot, but you could tell me, Fulton, we knew they should be good. That was all we were talking about. They were disappointing. Folks, that's where I get to the next 3 that are really the good sign. Let's go to our old friend Michael Massey, who has been a lightning rod of people being upset, and I've seen more than a few people not want him up on this baseball team at the big league level. Michael Massey, his last 6 games, batting 385, 571, 462, for a man that we made fun of, that he could not walk and was doing nothing but striking out. He has 5 walks to 5 strikeouts these last 6 games. He's also driven in. He's done just a great job. Michael Massey's learned patience. He's developing, hitting the ball hard. That's a good sign. That's a really good sign. What about Nick Pratto, who since his recall has been hitting great, and the Royals were hoping he could be a piece to the future, but last year was struggling. This year, these last 6 games, he's hitting 300, 391, 550 with a home run, 2 doubles. He's driven in 4, including that big 2-run home run to get the scoring started in the action on Friday. Nick Pratto's playing well, man. He's playing real well. And then lastly, we get to the guy I've been clamoring about since March, Maikel Garcia, who in his 6 games since being called up when this homestand began is batting 348, 346, the rare on-base percentage lower than batting average, and 435 with 2 doubles and 5 runs driven in. I get it. We can be all doom and gloom when it comes to this Royals pitching staff and the team overall. I get it. It's understandable. It's hard to be away from the negative. Is so much easier to focus on the positive. That's just how it works. And it happens. That's why I try to, tell y'all to try to find the positive energy of everything in life. It's easy to focus on negatives too much. The fact of the matter is, gang, in these last 6 games, 7 of your 9 hitters are really hitting it well, which is what a good team needs for their lineup. And 6 of them are cornerstones for your future. Because Sal is going to be here and helpful, but I don't know how much longer you can call him a part of the future. Because Sal's just getting old. But as long as he's here and he's hitting, I love it. But you know what else is great? Your future first baseman, DH, shortstop, third baseman, second baseman, and right fielder are all clicking. They're all playing so incredibly well. They are doing so many great things all at the same time because they're stopping pressing. They're realizing we can be patient. We don't need to swing at everything. We can take pitches. We can swing at what we want, not what they want us to swing, which is leading to better contact, lower chase rates, all those great things, all those numbers I've talked about all year. I'm not going to talk about them now, but they are getting better, and that's what matters. They're striking out less. And then you add in Freddie Fermin is kind of turning it on. It's a much lower sample, only really 3 games to go with over this stretch. But he's got a pair of home runs and a triple while driving in 3. Which, if Freddie Fermin can become an answer at catcher, that means MJ can truly be a full-time outfielder, which I feel is the true best spot for him long term. But I mean, you got Freddie Fermin hitting well. And that's a great sign. Listen, we can all be so incredibly upset and tired and frustrated and just wanting to, bash a head against a wall for the way this team's losing. Because losing isn't fun. Jake's talked about how he's at the point where, wins and losses don't matter anymore. So he doesn't care when the team wins or loses. I can't turn that off. I'm always going to care whether this team wins or loses, even if I know the wins and losses don't necessarily matter. Because they don't. What matters is how the team gets to the win total. That's what I told everybody, when we were kind of projecting win totals back in March. It didn't matter if it was 70 wins or 74 wins. It mattered how you got to the 70 wins or the 74 wins. If you got to 74 wins, but all your young guys struggled for the most part, and you were nowhere near closer to figuring out your future, versus 70 wins, but you know what your future is going to be, and a lot of young guys came on late and they figured it all out, and your young rotation got better. One of those is demonstrably better than the other, and it's the one with the lower win total. But winning and losing matters. This is a results-based business. You need to put something on the field that your fans are happy about. Like 29,000 people showed up to the K on Saturday for Lorenzo Cain's retirement ceremony, which was beautiful. I was not able to go personally. I had Washburn baseball I was committed to, but I was able to watch it when I got home. I got home with plenty of time, so I just was able to throw up Bally's on the TV. And it was beautiful, and it legitimately brought tears to my eyes. And it was great, and I'm glad so many people showed up for that. I am upset the Royals could not reward that crowd with a victory with them all coming out for that game because they were in it. They were energized. They were engaged with Lorenzo Cain in town. But, attendance has been a thing Jake and I have talked about. I was surprised 15,000 people showed up on Friday, or at least paid attendance. It was over 15,000. Credit to all y'all in Kansas City. I respect. Even people in our local area here in the capital city, if you went out there, respect. But I don't blame any of you when you say you're not going to go to the K, or people that say, why does John Sherman want us to foot the bill for a stadium when the team's this bad? No, you were all right. Like, they need to earn your money. They need to earn your viewership. They will never have to earn mine back because I've spent so much of my life heavily invested in this team that I can't turn away. I can't stop looking. I can't turn it off. But for others out there, yes, I'm not going to blame any of you for saying I'm not going to watch this team till they're better. I don't blame you. I won't call you a fair weather fan. I won't call you a banner. I won't call you anything bad because I get it. They need to earn your viewership. They need to show you that they are committed to actually doing things. But the development is important, and that's why in this moment, while they are not, 9-26, I don't even want to, 9-26, I hate saying those words. I really hate saying the words 9-26. But it's important to realize that even though they've gone 2-4 these last 6 games, there are things to be happy about. I can't call this weekend a win because they lost 2 of 3 to the A's. I cannot call that a win. No, can't do it, won't do it, can't do it. But the development's important. And it's true. But we have to realize, and we have to accept, the losing is going to happen this year, and it's painful. But that's why I say, look at the positive things they are doing. The hitting should be making some, find some joy in the hitting. I'm loving watching this offense play. Watching Maikel Garcia take great at bats. Watching Vanny Pasquantino crush baseballs. Watching Nick Prado find his way on. Michael Massey showing plate discipline. Bobby Witt Jr. figuring it out. MJ Melendez using the opposite field. Salvador Perez playing well and still looking great as he enters his mid-30s. That all is so great. And I hate that the bad pitching is wasting all of this good vibes with this pitching, with the hitting. That all of the positive energy and the momentum from this group of hitters is being wasted by the horrid pitching. But I don't want us to forget that this offense is taking steps forward, that guys are playing well, and that it points out that the Royals in May are choosing to play their youngsters. We've talked a bunch about the organization and what needs to be done. But we have to realize that this organization is doing things what I would call I don't kind of want to forcibly say the right way, but that's kind of the best way to view it. We've all been clamoring for an organization that's transactional, that does not hold on to bad mistakes, that plays the young kids. They're doing all of that. And I know at times we are also focused on things like, not DFAing Hunter Dozier. The fact of the matter is Hunter Dozier is playing well. And the Royals, whether you love it or you hate it, and I know all of you hate it, are trying desperately to get something back on their investment. I know where Jake sits, and I'm glad I don't have to do with that argument today. But this team has to balance things. It is not as simple, as much as Jake wants it to be as simple as John Sherman telling JJ Piccolo, your job is safe, I will not fire you. Of JJ telling Matt Quatrero, your job is safe, I will not fire you, do whatever you want. It is not that simple. That is not how this game works. But overall, this team is doing better things. They are doing better things. And I think they can get there going forward and what they try and do. But overall, the hitting staff's getting better, and I'm going to rest on that positivity as long as I can. Royals lineup is out along with a roster move. We talked about, of course, the trade that happened earlier today. The Royals have also announced this roster move. Ryan Yarbrough is going to the 15-day injured list with a terrifying designation of head fractures. That is terrifying, and I hope Ryan is seriously okay. But head fractures is not a jokingly around designation for the injury. I just hope the best for Ryan Yarbrough. Again, we will give you updates on that as much as we can, not even just today, but as we go on throughout the rest of this week. The corresponding move, Jose Cuas has been recalled from AAA Omaha. I'm interested to see, I was fascinated to see that the Royals made a move and did not bring up a starter. But what I think is happening is the Royals brought up a bullpen arm instead, and we'll figure out the starter when Friday comes. And so Cuas can now just serve and give them bullpen insurance over this long stretch. Hopefully, maybe he got some things figured out in Omaha. It was able to play better as well. I'm also going to give you the Royals starting lineup, one that I rather enjoy because, again, the kids are playing. Here's the Royals lineup against Dylan Cease, and we'll break down the Royals and White Sox series opener coming up in the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour here on Mic'd Up. Bobby Witt Jr. will lead off and play shortstop. Vinny Pasquantino is the DH. He will bat second. Salvador Perez, the catcher, will bat third. MJ Melendez is in right field. He will bat cleanup. Everett Olivares is in left field. He will bat fifth. Nick Prado, the first baseman, will bat sixth. Maikel Garcia at third will bat seventh. Michael Massey at second base will bat eighth. And Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field will bat ninth. As 8 of the 9 guys, I'm cool with seeing in there every day. And Jackie Bradley Jr. is playing because Kyle Isbell is hurt. I'm cool with this. We can talk all we want about the organization and everyone wanting them to do different things and make different moves. Fact of the matter is, we were yelling at this organization until July of last year to put a lineup of kids on the field and see what that looked like. It's May 8th. And they're already doing it in droves. We can bag on this team and this organization for a lot, and deservedly so, for a lot of things. I think we are though starting to see signs that things are getting better organizationally at the top, and this offense getting better means, they're facing a really good pitcher in Dylan Cease today. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to get him for a little bit. It might be tough. Cease is one of the better ones in the league, but it will be fascinating to see what happens going forward. We'll take a timeout. We'll wrap up the 1 o'clock hour mic'd up coming up next. Wrapping up this final hour of Mic'd Up, or at least this final part of the 1 o'clock hour. We have still a whole other hour to go here on Mic'd Up on 580 WIBW. I've talked a little bit that the NFL schedule will be released. I believe, again, Thursday's the plan, though that the NFL has kind of alluded to could change. They're trying to figure some things out. But we all know the schedule is going to be released this week. And people have opinions on that. When I talked to Michael Peterson, Bolts from the Blue, it was a very fun time. We discussed, Chiefs and Chargers and how, that's probably going to be like a week 2 or week 3 game. But maybe that's the opening night game for the Chiefs. Because what we do know, we don't know their opponent. We do know the Kansas City Chiefs will play Thursday night at Arrowhead Stadium. They will play Thursday night to open the season at Arrowhead Stadium because they are, just to remind everybody here for a really fun moment, they are your reigning defending Super Bowl champions here in Kansas City. It's great. Awesome. Fantastic stuff. Chiefs, Super Bowl champions. But a familiar team is already talking a little bit about who could face the Chiefs. Mike Hilton, member of the Cincinnati Bengals, one of their defensive backs. I believe one of the ones who coined the term Burrowhead. Speaking to the media during some Bengals, minicamp things and what have you, said he would like it. Everyone he said everyone, including the Bengals, would love to see Chiefs Bengals opening night on Thursday when the NFL season begins at Arrowhead. I'm cool with it. Chiefs Bengals is his best rivalry in the NFL right now. Straight up, it's the best one, and it is not better. Like, it's two teams who I think legitimately don't like each other, and they're really good games with really good players, and you have enough back and forth because the Bengals have won some regular season matchups, but the Chiefs have won the ones that matter the most, except for that one AFC title game we don't talk about. It's the best rivalry in the NFL. I'm cool with a lot of options for the Chiefs opening night, but if they wanted Chiefs-Bengals to be Thursday night, I'm not going to complain because that would get you ratings, it would get you views, and oh boy, would it be a lot of fun and would be a spicy matchup. That'll do it for the 1 o'clock hour matchup. Coming up to the 2 o'clock hour, we'll hear from Chiefs head coach Andy Reid. It's time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Cast here with you, riding solo for today's show as Jake LeBon had the day off. So I got the inmate got to run the asylum for today. It's very fun. I rather enjoy it. I hope all of you enjoy it as well. I know I say it a lot, but I do mean it. Y'all are why we do this. I mean, for a good chunk, we can only talk to ourselves and talk to air so much. It's the fact that, we have you all listening and responding, interacting. That does make us happy. So a big thank you, as always, to everyone who's tuned in for today's show. If you would like to chime in for today's show, you can join me on the text line, 785-272-9429. Give your thoughts on the Filling Place Wine and Spirits phone line, 785-272-9429 as well. Or in the comments section of our YouTube live stream, youtube.com is where you need to go. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. We've already gotten over 250. This next goal, at least for me, 300. Let's push to 300. That would be awesome. And while you're watching the live stream, you can hop in the comment section as well. Coming up in the final hour of Mic'd Up here today, we're going to hear, to lead off this hour, from head coach Andy Reid. He spoke briefly today, not a long-winded moment from Andy Reid, but there were some interesting thoughts and comments made by Andy Reid. There's also some interesting tweets that are being put out by one Chris Jones right now that I'm going to get to as we hear from Andy Reid. That has a thought that if they could make it work, I would honestly be 100% cool with. We're also going to round up overreaction, proper reaction coming up this hour as well. We're also going to preview the beginning of the series between the Royals and the White Sox and what you can expect from the Royals and the White Sox coming up in this series this afternoon, coming this evening from Kauffman Stadium. We have 3 evening games, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Our 3 evening tilts, and then Thursday will be an afternoon contest, a 1:10 first pitch, is why Jake and I will be off air a little bit early coming up on Thursday. But Andy Reid met with the media earlier today, and he had some interesting thoughts, some observations, spoke a little bit about the rookies. Chiefs are doing rookie minicamp and are finishing up rookie minicamp at the moment, getting that ready to go, getting the rookies running through their paces. If you go to any Chiefs social media site, you're going to be flooded and inundated with, different things that they're doing and different things that they're working on and all the variety of, positional drills and different bits and pieces and things like that, and trying to figure out what needs to be done. And it's very fascinating. Then he also had an interesting thought on the offensive line and what that'll happen this year. But head coach Andy Reid with me today. Here's what Andy Reid had to say.
All right. As far as injuries go, really, it's just Felix. So he had a thumb that he had surgery on, and he did a little bit more today than he did yesterday, and we'll just keep gradually bringing him back in. It was good to get these guys in here, the rookies, and give them a chance. Good tryout camp for a lot of these guys, and I think we'll probably keep a couple of them. So it was beneficial. Anyways, with that, time's yours.
In a short time like this with a lot of these guys, I mean, they know this is maybe not going to be NFL players. What's it take for them to come in here and work hard and give you guys kind of what you need?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, especially with the heat we had, right? So the last couple of days have been a blazer out there, and they work their way through it. I think it's great for them. We take a picture afterwards, and I told them, when you get chubby like me and your grandkids ask you, did you ever play in the NFL? You go, yeah, here's the picture. Here's some proof. So that, it's a lot of them won't have that opportunity, but they had this chance here.
Just to clarify on Felix, the thumb surgery is before the draft. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was actually before the workout that we had, right before that workout that we had here. So he wasn't able to do that either.
Any idea what timeline for him? Like
Yeah.
OTAs?
Yeah, we're kind of gradually bringing him back. I mean, today he had his helmet on and did a little bit more. You'd hope maybe phase 3, but you don't know. We'll just see how he feels.
What have you seen from Rashee Rice so far?
Yeah, strong, kind of things we saw on tape. He's got to make sure he gets his running in. This is that position we run like crazy, so he's got to get that part of him taken care of. But you can see the strength and his route running, his ability to work in space. He's got good hands.
What's the biggest obstacle for new players when they go from college to pros? Is the playbook, is it terminology, is it distractions? In your opinion, what's the biggest?
Yeah, it's probably all of the above. I mean, from getting in a huddle on the offensive side, to these long play calls, to the amount of work that you're going to end up getting, shorter lines. So, and just, the magnitude of it, they're going against real good people. They're going against the best player they play together every day. They're doing it. So they got to up their game a bunch.
Coach, Jerry Neely was back in this camp. What have you seen in him as far as progress year to year?
Yeah, he can kind of do a lot of things for you. So from return game to wide receiver to running back, he worked running back in this camp. But he did wide receiver the latter part of last year. So it's real smart, quick. It's not the biggest guy, but he knows how to play the game.
Is he sticking with the running backs, you think, now?
I think right here he will, yeah, but we'll move him around too. We have that flexibility to do it.
I had a chance to ask you about Donovan Smith since you signed him.
Yeah.
What did you like about him? What did you see him fill?
Yeah, so he's been a left tackle at a high level. If you look at last year, he was hurt, and then the year before that, he was one of the top graded left tackles in the league. So, and we've had a chance to play against him a couple times. So I know, seen him firsthand there. Good football player.
He can be with the ones on the left side when you get started?
He'll be with the left side, yes. Yeah, probably with the ones, yeah.
Does that mean Jawan is going to be on the right, or are y'all still evaluating that?
Yes, we'd move him over to the right. Yeah. Somebody's phone is going wacky here, man.
Generic Prince, the running back. You got a Tulsa. What are your early impressions of him?
Of who?
The generic Prince, 34, the running back.
Yeah, I like him. I think you're going to grab him right here in about a second. He's coming in. So he's a good-looking kid, picked things up well. His size, that's the thing that jumps out at you. Size, strength, and he caught the ball well. So we knew he could run it. We'll see how he does once we get to that point, but we've seen that on tape. So.
Which is less to work again. We won't pay you for a bit. Isaiah Pacheco, it seems like he had off-season surgery. What's his
He did. He's making progress. We'll just see how he does with it. But I can't even give you a timeline on it. But he is doing well. He goes through all the steps out there with phase 2 and that. So, just you can't get hit on that thing.
Andy, when you go through all your evaluations and process, especially the guys that you have draft picks for, when you see them out there, even though it's a short sample size, there's sometimes you're like, oh man, that's a lot better than what I expected, or like that's about what you thought when you saw the tape, because you never see them until you see them.
Yeah. Then you take in consideration it's in shorts, so they look pretty good, but you can't hit anybody, so you're missing that part of the game. But I mean, you get that. You got a bird's eye on them, right? Everybody's watching them and seeing how they do, and normally it's pretty good in this camp.
Last one, Adam.
And Justin Ross, I thought he might be eligible for this camp. Is that not
Yeah, he
right?
wasn't. No.
No.
Little short, Coach. We get to see some of the stuff that happens around the field, but you guys are watching everything, right? The meeting rooms and how they go there. How important is that part of this? What you can see how they go about doing it the Chiefs way when you're evaluating who's going to kind of hang around.
I mean, you look at everything. I mean, these guys are under a microscope, so you really can't play at this level if you can't think. And to think, you better study. Very few guys can just look at it and have it. I mean, you got to go over it and over it and over it. So we're aware of all that. We've got to keep note of that.
How was Kelsey's podcast?
I'll let you guys tell me. That's not my shtick, as you'd say.
Always fun hearing from head coach Andy Reid. Apparently, yes, a guest on the Kelsey Brothers podcast. I don't know if that episode's come out yet. I think it comes out Wednesday. I think it is this week's episode. I don't know. As much as I love the Kelsey Brothers, listen. We're already going off script here. This is what happens when I get to do things. I go on random tangents. I don't have a lot of time to sit and just listen to podcasts. It's like podcasts for me are great for long drives. Outside of that, I never have time to do them. So it's very hard for me to sit down and listen to like the Kelsey's talk for like an hour plus about random things. It's very entertaining, and I have listened to it before, and it's very fascinating. But I don't have time for that. However, that all being said, I might just sit down and listen to the one with Andy Reid because that does sound like it'd be very fascinating. Some interesting notes and thoughts on some things Andy Reid had to say. Donovan Smith will run with the ones on the left side to at least start the OTAs for the Chiefs. That's not that surprising. It feels like what was probably going to happen with the Donovan Smith signing. They were not going to just, randomly move him to right tackle all of a sudden after he's been a left tackle, all of his career. And I do not imagine they're bringing him in to just be a backup. So that doesn't surprise me. It's also the general reminder. This is to start OTAs. Things can change a lot when we start going through OTAs and mandatory minicamp and go into training camp coming up, in July and in August and things like that. I mean, remember, there was a time where Austin Blythe was starting at center over Creed Humphrey. Like, things change. Guys get better or get worse. I imagine the Chiefs will probably take a look at a bunch of different combinations, but it does not surprise me that Donovan Smith will start running with the ones to at least begin the offseason activities. As Andy Reid noted off the top, Felix Uzama had a little minor surgery, had to take care of an issue with his hand. Should be good to go, though. That's also good to hear that Felix should be good to go to start for most of the activities. But for right now, I'm going to kind of just nurse and rehab that injury back. I'm very excited to see what Felix does in year one in Kansas City. We talked about that a lot. I know a lot of you out there think he's going to be a big hit in year one. I hope he is. I'm trying to temper expectations so that way if, he doesn't get up to the best start, no one's upset. But I do think he's going to be a great fit for Kansas City and do a lot of great things coming up through mandatory minicamp and things like that. That all being said, there is something I did want to get to. Speaking of edge rushers, Chris Jones, a man known for tweeting things out and occasionally trying to stir the pot and do different things. Chris Jones tweeted this out about 30 minutes ago. I think if I can do math properly. No, 20 minutes ago. I can't do math properly. I can't do math properly. Chris Jones tweeted, at the real Frank C, let's finish it, a bunch of dots, at Chiefs. Frank Clark is currently unsigned. He is not signed with anybody. He is currently not playing football for anyone. The Chiefs did cut him this offseason to save over $20 million to the cap, which we all knew was going to happen. And it had nothing to do with Frank as the player overall. I mean, it was the fact that he is not worth the money it was. And Frank knew that, and Frank understood it. But even then, I think we all kind of knew that didn't rule out he wasn't going to be in Kansas City. And that maybe there was still a chance for a reunion of some sort. Listen, I know Chris Jones, just a guy out here. Chris and Frank were really good buddies and I've become really good friends. We're great friends through those championship runs and things like that and figuring out what it was going to be. But man, I can't lie. Chris Jones tweeting that out is not nothing. Chris Jones trying to be a little vocal about that ain't nothing. It's that way of putting a little pressure on a guy to maybe even take a discount and things like that. But if the Chiefs could find a way, because I still think the Chiefs are probably mostly done with their moves, and they still have some, cap space to negotiate and things to free up and blah, blah, blah. I have to think that you still would like a veteran pass rusher to add just to give the room a little bit of length, even if it's just through training camp. I mean, also when it comes to Frank Clark, he mentored George Karlaftis the entire offseason last year. We can all have our opinions about Frank. And I think Frank ended his career the best he could in Kansas City, or at least that run in Kansas City. From the way it started, the great postseason performances first year in 2019, and then, the way things kind of fizzled off until he once again had another great postseason performance in 2022. Oh, in 2023 postseason, but you know what I mean. If it could work and if it financially makes sense, I'm 100% on board with Frank Clark coming back. Frank Clark at a cost-controlled, low veteran price is worth the price. Incredibly so. To be a veteran piece of that room who can still do some good things right and can be a leader in that room, which is not something, I'll be honest, I really thought I would say that much about Frank Clark. But he can be a leader. He can. He really can be in it. And it's such a nice thing to see and such an interesting thing to see for him on what he can be and what he can try and do for this team going forward. It delights me, and I hope Frank could maybe come back. It'd be nice to see it work out. But we'll have to see. But Chris Jones starting the campaign pitch to get Frank Clark back in Kansas City. That's not a small thing that's happening. Of course, there's also the part of Chris Jones that I would like the Chiefs to get done, which is extend Chris Jones, because that would, one, save the money for the cap, which is always nice to have that flexibility, and two, locks up their best individual defensive player for a good long while, at least for another 3 years would be nice. Don't know if the Chiefs will do it, but we'll see going forward. Last note I want to make on the Chiefs. Our good friend Kent Swanson retweeted his own tweet from this was about 5 days ago when Kent originally tweeted this out, but it was upon hearing the things that the Chiefs and Andy Reid were talking about today, he wanted to kind of re-hit it. And I think Kent makes a good point about how I think it looks like the Chiefs' offensive line plans have kind of shifted and shuffled. Kent said back on May 3rd, this is a direct quote from Kent's tweet, the Chiefs were totally taking Anton Harrison if he was there, weren't they? And I think Kent's right. I think the original plan was Juwan Taylor to be at left and a first-round right tackle. I think when that didn't work, they're fine with the project tackle that Wanya Morris is, but now they have audibled, they have shifted, and now we'll just have Juwan Taylor play right, Donovan Smith, a veteran we trust, can play left, and no one has to be too out of position to start while we're kind of going through some things. It again speaks to the flexibility for the Kansas City Chiefs, the things that they are able to do, and how well they can try and work things out going forward. It's nice to see, and it's just nice to see an organization with flexibility above all else, because not a lot of organizations have that when they try and do different things. It doesn't always work out that well for them to try and be flexible about certain things and try and figure out how certain things are going to go. We'll take a time out here on Mike Doe. When we come back, time for the overreaction, proper reaction here on 580 WIBW. Time for a little overreaction, proper reaction here on Mic'd Up, and I bring back in my good man Kyle Manthe to help me out with our segment today. Kyle, you're probably one of the only NBA guys a part of the sports team, and you've done enough. You're part of the sports team now. You and Dan, and then a little Brendan. Brendan definitely knows more than me, and we're both Bulls fans. Dan, big Nuggets fan. You, a Phoenix Suns fan. That being said, speaking of the aforementioned Phoenix Suns, overreaction, proper reaction with the series, as far as I know, now back being tied at 2 games apiece. Overreaction, proper reaction, the Suns can actually take out the Nuggets and move on to the Western Conference Finals.
I'm going to say it's a proper reaction. If Devin Booker keeps shooting like 75% from the
that
field,
helps. That helps a lot.
Scoring like 40 points a game, I think it's a proper reaction. I will say that I think these are the 2 best teams in the West, so I think you could even extrapolate all the way out to the finals. I think if it was Denver against Golden State or the Lakers, they would also advance. But I think that's a proper reaction. If you asked me like 16 hours ago and definitely like 4 days ago, I would have said it's an overreaction. But after seeing Devin Booker have like quite literally the most efficient 2-game stretch for a guard in playoff history, I think it's a proper reaction now.
I think it can be as well, and I will just add this as well. I've spent more than a few times talking to Dan about some playoff stuff. Dan's kind of with you in that he thinks the winner of Nuggets Suns, it goes to the NBA Finals. That both of those teams are much better than what's going on the other side of the bracket. But I think using the operative word of can, I do think it is a proper reaction. If I change the operative word to will beat the Nuggets and move on, I think we might need to go into overreaction territory because of the way the Suns have won their 2 games. But it being knotted up at 2, I very much think the can is fully on the board.
I would have to agree. And this kind of leads into my first overreaction, proper reaction, which is more general NBA, which is just looking at how all 4 series are spaced out right now. Suns, Nuggets tied 2-2, Sixers, Boston tied 2-2, and then the 2 series tonight, the Heat and the Knicks 2-1 for the Heat, and then Warriors, Lakers 2-1 for the Lakers. So they're all very close. After tonight, they could all be tied 2-2. Is it an overreaction or proper reaction that the NBA Finals or the favorite to reach the NBA Finals could not be the 1st or 2nd seed in either conference? In the East, the 1 seed Bucks, they're already out of it. The Celtics, they're tied 2-2. And in the West, Nuggets tied 2-2. Grizzlies already out of it.
Yeah.
Overreaction, proper reaction. We could have 2, 3 seeds or lower in the finals.
I think it's 100% proper reaction. Like, if you told me that Miami wins tonight to take a 3-1 series lead, I would not be surprised. Partially because I love Jimmy Butler to death, and Jimmy G Buckets is going to forever be one of my favorite players. And for those that don't know, the G stands for gets. And also the Knicks are just a travesty, always and forever. So that wouldn't surprise me. So there's an 8 seed possibly getting a chance to play for the Eastern Conference Finals and getting to the NBA Finals. If you told me Philly knocks off Boston, after what I saw yesterday, I mean, Boston, I think, could have won their game if it didn't take 20 million years to get into their final action, which I will never understand in basketball. People taking 20 million years to get into their final sets. Like, get into it with 10 seconds on the shot, on the clock in general. That's my personal opinion. My very uneducated hoops opinion that I'm not very, highly versed on. That's my opinion. And then, we talked about, you tell me the Suns knock off the Nuggets, I would not be stunned. I would still probably lean Nuggets right now because I think as an overall complete team and what Phoenix has had to do, I think Denver was going to win. But if you were to tell me that the highest seed period in the NBA Finals of either team is a 3, I would not be shocked. I think it's entirely proper. I do not think that is a surprising thing to say because of the way things are shaking out.
I'm right there with you. I think the highest chance to advance to the finals of any of the teams left, I still have to give it to Boston, who is a 2 seed, a very conventional team that many people expected to be there just because of how good they are, and they're not trailing in their series. I think the Heat are the most likely team to advance to the conference finals and win their series just because Jimmy Butler is just incredible.
Yes.
And they just seem so much more overwhelming than the Knicks right now. But I would still lean that the Heat get eliminated by either Boston or Philly, which would kind of eliminate that. And on the other side, it has to be the Nuggets as the top 3 seed to make it in the West. And there's always a chance. I'm never going to count out Stephen Curry.
No,
I know he's trailing right now, and he's trailing to LeBron James, who we're kind of overlooking. It's LeBron James.
It's very interesting.
But I can't count out the Warriors. I mean, they literally just won it last year. It's like counting out Patrick Mahomes. Even if his team isn't seated as high as it is, you can never do that.
It's hard to count out the man that feels like anytime you blink could drop 50 points. It's absolutely absurd.
Exactly.
My next one for you here, Kyle. Let's go to college basketball in the Big 12. Overreaction, proper reaction with the additions of Tyler Perry to Kansas State and Hunter Dickinson to KU. KU and Kansas State should be the top 2 favorites to win the Big 12 this season. Overreaction, proper reaction.
I think that's a proper reaction. I think definitely KU is going to be up there every year.
Always.
One of the other contenders would have been Texas. They've had so much fluctuation with their roster.
And I will say, adding Max Amos does make Texas better, but they're coached by Rodney Perry.
That is true. And they keep losing.
Also losing a lot of players.
And players, and there's just a lot of flux in general with Texas as a being. But
as an entity.
Yeah, a lot of it will hinge on how the transfer portal shakes out for K-State especially, but it's pretty much a given every year. KU is going to be one of the 2 teams. So you're pretty safe there. And I believe in Jerome Tang. I believe in the foundation that they created in the first year for K-State. I think they'll be right up there, and they'll get the respect that they didn't get last year in the preseason polls, at least, and they'll be right up there.
I'm right there with you. I'd probably say proper as well, because I think Texas would be that number 3, and Eddie Max Amos helps, and some of the guys they get to bring back. But, a lot of people have made the joke to me Rodney Perry beat KU twice. No, Marcus Carr and all those seniors are who beat people last year. Marcus Carr was drawing up plays in the huddle. I do not believe that Texas made the right decision on who they hired as their head coach. West Virginia, I think, will be a really interesting team this year. Can't lie, Bob Huggins had a lot of talent. He has raided that transfer portal. But I don't know how it's all going to gel together in year 1. That matters. K returns a lot of players, and they got the best player available in the transfer portal, Hunter Dickinson. K-State returns some very nice players, who Naquan Tomlin, who I think could be one of the best players in the Big 12 this year. And they added probably the second best player in the transfer portal in Tyler Perry. I'm interested to see what both those teams do. There's still some more moving parts to make for both those teams, but it'll be fascinating to see what both teams do going forward. But I was surprised to say that if we get betting odds time, that those 2 are the ones with the 2 best odds to win the Big 12.
Completely agree with you. Going to the opposite end of the standing spectrum. Sorry if this feels like a stake in the heart to you.
This is going to hurt.
I have to ask the question.
This is going to hurt.
Is it an overreaction or proper reaction that your Kansas City Royals are the worst team in baseball after losing 2 out of 3 to the A's?
Oh boy. So here's the thing. Man, I want to fight this so hard. I am still going to say it is an overreaction, because does not one series a season makes. However, they did lose 2 of 3 to the team I would say is the worst. And unfortunately, they, unlike other years, they don't get a rematch. Like, it used to be, all right, you get, you get to find a way, maybe play some teams differently. No, there's no rematch here. It's done. This is the series. I have to think, and I don't care if this is the premise of the question. I'm making it. I'm changing the question. I'll pull a little Roddy Piper here. Just when you think you have all the answers, I am going to change the questions. Here's the thing. I think once this season comes and ends, the Royals will not be the worst team in baseball, which I know sounds blasphemous to everyone out there, maybe even to you, Kyle, that I'm saying this. That being said, with the way the offense is playing and the fact that I think by the midway point, better pitching talent will be on this team based on elevations and guys getting more opportunities and maybe some churning at the deadline, I think they are not the worst team. Oh, like I am very much coloring this as when the season ends. Because I can't lie, if we're going right now in this moment in time, it's not good. It's not good. They are 1 win ahead of the Oakland A's. So they don't have the worst record in Major League Baseball. I think it is prisoner of the moment to think they'll be the worst team in the league this entire year. And that's where, like, I have to keep saying I'm changing the frame of the question here a little bit because I think that's the better way to look at it. And also because I don't want to completely crap on my team the entire day. But they will get better. Like, they will not be this bad all year. And if you think they'll be this bad all year, I'm not going to tell you how to think or feel. We all deal with our emotions in our own way. I promise you, though, they will not be this bad all year. Like, I stone cold lock, I will mow Jake's yard for 52 straight weeks. They are not going to be this bad when the year ends. They will not. Stone cold lock as can be. So I think it's a little bit of an overreaction to say they're the worst team in the league overall when the year ends. If you're saying just right now through the first however many games, 35, well, I plead the fifth because you're not entirely wrong. But I'll go to this because I'm not alone here. My man Chris on the YouTube comments. They'll finish at least 10 games in front of Oakland this year. Correct. At least. And that means they're not the worst. They're bad. I will not lie. They're bad. Kyle, you're correct on the premise. They're bad. I don't think they're the complete worst because I think if you had Oakland and Kansas City play 10 times, so far 2 out of 3 goes to Oakland. I mean, 6 out of 10 goes to KC, 7 out of 10 goes to KC. Because, I mean, a couple of balls bounce the right way in the other 2, and they at least win 2 of 3, which I know we're playing that game now. But overall, for a very long-winded answer, I think it's a smidgen, and I mean a smidgen, of an overreaction to call them the worst team in the league.
I might surprise you, but I'll come to your support. I agree
thank
with
you.
it. I think it is an overreaction to say that they're the worst team in the league.
Now, you want to say they're the worst pitching staff in the league? Oh, boy, you are correct. There's not a worst pitching room in the league.
That probably would be true. Just
that's a stone cold fact.
Just helping out your argument, just looking at, even if you want to go up until this point, I don't think it's that they've been the worst team. Just looking at run differential, which I know is kind of fluky, but the Royals have been really bad. They've been outscored by 66 runs this year.
Not good.
The A's, even after beating the Royals, they've been outscored by 124 runs. I'm not great at math, but that's almost double the Royals.
The A's projected statistics coming into this series, and again, one series does not a season make. We're like bordering on Cleveland Spiders bad territory. So no, I will not let any of you tell me that just because A's win 2 of 3 in one series, that they're a better overall team than Kansas City. Because in baseball, plenty of times, and by plenty, I mean sometimes, not a lot, but it happens, the worst team wins the series. It happens.
I won't go as far as to say that the Royals will finish 10 games clear of the A's by the end of the season. I think it'd be closer to like 5 or something.
Mark in the YouTube comments agrees with you on 5, if that's your number.
Yeah, it's double digits seems ambitious right now, considering we've played 35 games and the Royals have not won 10 games yet.
Don't remind me.
You can argue that the A's play in a tougher division and the AL Central just in general is very mid, which kind of doesn't help the Royals case, but the run differential difference is just so obscene between Kansas City being as bad as we think they are and the A's are nearly twice as bad. The Moneyball line is literally coming true.
It really
the A's
is
this season.
50 feet of crap, and then there's us. Yeah, no, that is. I'm interested to see, and I actually need to look at who we'll look at that here coming up next. Who the A's play next? What happens? Do the Royals do better against the White Sox than the A's, and do the A's falter immediately? I don't know. Who knows? But I'm going to sit here and hold that they're not the worst team yet. That could always change. That'll do it for a reaction, proper reaction here on Mike Depp. We'll take a time out when we come back. We'll look at the Chicago White Sox versus Kansas City Royals in that preview of Game 1 coming up tonight. Wrapping up this final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. It actually is the final hour now. I am not screwing up my words when I say that this time. We do have Royals baseball tonight, which I know some of you just let out the biggest groan in the universe that I said that. And I know some of you also will definitely not be watching the game tonight. And you know what? That is your prerogative. I do not blame you nor judge you for even a singular moment. But the Kansas City Royals begin a 4-game series with the Chicago White Sox this evening. This wraps up the 10-game homestand. The 10-game homestand that I said they needed to go 5-5 for it to be considered a win. Because my thought process was they could take 1 from the Orioles, 2 from the A's, 2 from the White Sox. We're at 5-5. The problem is they're taking 1 for the Orioles and 1 from the Athletics. They're 2-4. So if they wanted to get to my number of 5-5, they would need to take 3 of 4 from the Chicago White Sox. A not fun task. That being said, the Chicago White Sox, in case any of you have not noticed, are stinky. Not Royals level of stinky, but still bad. They are 4th in the American League Central, just ahead of the aforementioned Kansas City Royals. The White Sox sit at 12-23 on the season. They have been winners as of late. More important, the White Sox, if I do my math right here, They have won 5 of their last 7 to reach 12-23. So it was going 8. At one point, they were 7-21. They were in Royals territory at one point of how bad they were playing. They have since now moved to 12-23. They are 5-2 of their last 7. They took a series from the Minnesota Twins. They took 2-1 over the Twins, and they just took a series from the Cincinnati Reds, 2-1 over the Reds. That around that bookended a terrible streak, including at one point a 10-game losing streak. The problem for the White Sox is a combination of guys underperforming and a lot of injuries. They have been bit once again for another year by the injury bug. Eloy Jimenez, who just went on the injured list, he is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with an appendectomy. He, much like Nicky Lopez, dealing with an appendectomy. That is the biggest one. No one else worth noting is currently on the injured list, but are all guys battling back from injuries. Guys like, Yohan Moncada dealing with injuries. Eloy Jimenez was being injured. Luis Roberts dealt with some stuff this year. It's some interesting stuff with what the White Sox will have to do, but that's been part of their problem. The other problem for the White Sox, they can't pitch. They can't pitch. They are very, very bad overall when it comes to pitching. Their rotation is Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, Michael Kopech, Mike Clevenger, and Dylan Cease. The Royals will get everyone but Kopech in this series. So they'll face Giolito, Lynn, Clevenger, and Cease. It begins with Dylan Cease this evening. On the year, Dylan Cease is 2-1 with a 4.58 ERA. He is, by stuff, still one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. His walks are still a problem. He is the second most walks among starting pitchers for the Chicago White Sox. Only Michael Kopech has walked more. He's still got the strikeout stuff. He averaged 11 Ks per 9. But the problem is he gives up a lot of walks, and he can give us some hits this year. So I'm interested to see what the Royals do against Dylan Cease coming up in this contest, because Dylan Cease has been a thorn in the Royals side in the past. But this is where I'm fascinated to see what the Royals do in this series. They face Cease, whose ERA is 4.58. Look at Lucas Giolito, who has the best ERA among the rotation at 3.67. He's 1-2 with a 3.67 ERA for the White Sox. He's been their best starter, but has had his own issues. He's been able to up his command with not a lot of walks, only walked 9 in 41 innings, but has had other issues as well, mainly being partially bit by the home run bug, as much as many of these White Sox pitchers have been. And then they get Lance Lynn, who is really struggling, and Mike Clevenger, who's really struggling. This feels like it can go one of two ways. Either the Royals could maybe actually get some wins, maybe actually take the 2 games I thought they could. They end up going 4-6 on the homestand versus 5-5, which is unfortunate. But I mean, they were, barely had anything at home going into this weekend. So getting 4 home wins in a 10-game stretch honestly feels like a win. I'll take it where you can get it. This also feels like a, series where the White Sox might be able to get back on track. And I know that feels like a strange thing to say with the Royals hitters performing as well as they are right now. But I would also like to note, at some point, the Royals offense will cool off a bit. They will take some steps back and not be, kind of as productive as they overall have been. And I worry that this might be the series that happens. I don't know if it will be, but this is a very talented Chicago White Sox. This is a Chicago White Sox team with talent that is incredibly underperforming, though at the same time, I did project them to finish worse than the Royals in the AL Central this year. That's probably not going to happen unless the White Sox go on a terrible skid and the Royals really turn some things on. But my idea was, I still think there's part of the team that I do not like and do not play well. Mainly, I always thought the White Sox would have some good pitching, but I feel like other parts of the pitching were good enough. And I felt like their offense overall was going to have issues. And I've been kind of right on different beats of this. Offensively, they don't do anything too incredibly well. They've been in a bit of an offensive slump this year. They don't hit for a ton of power. They have 2 players tied for the team lead in home runs with Luis Robert with 7 and Jake Berger with 7. But even with Jake Berger, 7 home runs, he bats .224. He's had a lot of other issues. When he makes contact, it's loud contact, but he also strikes out a ton and does not walk a ton as well. The White Sox have old friend Andrew Benintendi in the lineup. He has been playing for them. He was one of their off-season's acquisitions. We'll see what's going to be going on with Benny tonight. I assume he's going to be in the lineup. But that's been the biggest thing for the White Sox is their pitching has been underperforming and their offense has really, really been struggling. Their offense has figured it out the last few games. That's been one of their biggest things is figuring out their offense as of late. I believe it was their last game. The White Sox scored 17 runs, which is impressive. Yeah, they won 17-4 over the Reds. In their last few games, the White Sox, they've gone 17 runs, 3 runs, 5 runs, 3 runs in 12 innings, 6 runs, 3 runs, and then 12 runs. So they've had a few big outbursts and a few low ones. So I think both we're basically what we're getting to make a long story short. This series, I think, is going to be about 2 offenses that are righting themselves. So which offense can stay hot? Because I think these are 2 hot offenses. And then more importantly, whose pitching staff rights themselves? Because that's, I think, an even bigger common thread between these 2 teams. And the thing is, the difference between the White Sox and the Royals pitching problem is because they just have bad pitchers. The White Sox pitching problem is they have good pitchers that are struggling. Like Dylan Cease is much better than a 4.58 ERA. Dylan Cease has been a guy even though he's a White Sox player, so it bums me out how good he is. But I've been high on Dylan Cease for, since he's really started to turn things around. His walks have always been an issue, but if he can get the walks under control, then he can be a really, really good and really talented player. It's been interesting to see what he does tonight. And overall, historically, Dylan Cease has pitched very well against the Kansas City Royals. He's made 12 starts in his career against Kansas City. He's gone 4-3 in those starts with a 2.58 ERA. And he has struck out 78 in those 66 in the 3rd inning. So Dylan Cease has always been a bit of a thorn in the side of the Royals. But I'm really fascinated to see what happens, what they do, and how this game goes tonight. Zach Greinke on the bump for the Royals this evening. It is a home Zach Greinke start, so I assume Zach Greinke will look pretty good because, like I've said numerous times, Zach Greinke at home is fantastic, and Zach Greinke on the road is buns. So maybe the Royals last time Zach Greinke took them out at home, they threw a shutout as a team. They had their first shutout of the year against the Orioles, a team with a good offense, an offense that just put up a double-digit 11 spot on them the night before. So could you get off on the right foot? Could you win back-to-back games for the 2nd time this season? And it really hurts that I'm saying that and phrasing it that way when we are on May 8th. But could you do it? I think it's possible. Getting to Dylan Cease will be a problem, but the White Sox bullpen has not been great this year. The White Sox bullpen's been has some good players in it. Gregory Sanchez has been fantastic this year, but also some real bad players in it. Some guys who have not pitched well out of the pen. So I honestly think there might be some offense on one of the 2 sides, if not both sides. I think Zach Greinke can hold it down, but I don't know if Zach Greinke goes for, 5 shutout innings again. That feels like asking far too much. But overall, it should be a fun match between these 2 teams, and we'll see what ends up happening going forward. But it should be great, and it should be a tremendous amount of fun. Real quick, I will re-hit you with the Royals lineup. We talked about it earlier on in the show today, but we're going to re-hit it here again. By the way, Junior's going to lead off at short. Vinny Pasquantino is your DH batting 2nd. Salvador Perez, your catcher, is batting 3rd. MJ Melendez in right is batting cleanup. Edward Olivares, the left fielder, is batting 5th. Nick Prado at first base is batting 6th. Michael Garcia, the 3rd baseman, is batting 7th. Michael Massey, the 2nd baseman, is batting 8th. And Jackie Bradley Jr., the center fielder, is batting 9th. All in support, again, of Zach Greinke. Hopefully it's a better game. I'm, like I always do, for better or worse, I'm going to watch all 9 innings. And, man, let me tell you, that has not been a fun job a lot of times this year. But hopefully, Zach Greinke on the bump, struggling White Sox team, I still don't think it's out of this world to say they can take two of these games and split the series 2-2. It'd be nice. But I think it all starts if they can get a win tonight. If they get a win tonight, good things will happen. They start this series off with a loss. Well, I don't know how much worse things can get, but it's definitely not great when Zach Greinke at home doesn't result in a win, because that's where they're at with his pitching staff. We'll take one more timeout. We'll wrap things up with a mic drop when we come back. Time for the mic drop here on 580 WIBW. Before we get to that, just to wrap up the last little piece of good news for the Kansas City Royals. After a minor setback, outfielder Drew Waters will begin a rehab assignment with AAA Omaha starting tomorrow. So he was originally supposed to do it, I believe, about last week or so. He's supposed to start his rehab. Had a minor setback with his back. Came back through, did some good extra work in extended spring training. He will now begin a rehab assignment in AAA. I have to imagine that when Waters is back, that might be the end of Jackie Bradley Jr. And if anything, Jackie Bradley Jr. might then only stay around as long until Kyle Isbell is healthy. But it's a good sign that Drew Waters is beginning a rehab assignment. Hope he is back and with big league club as soon as possible. Because, man, does that kid have some potential as a good plus defender and center with switch hitting abilities. I'm excited to see what Drew Waters can do in year 2, really year 1 in full in Kansas City. For my drop today, it's very simple. Part 1, thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having all you around. Great interaction as always with all of you on the text line and in the YouTube comments as well. I thank you for stopping by and listening. It's always a pleasure. And very simply, Royals, go do a win. Win back-to-back games for the first time since your first road series of the year. Win 2 games in a row at home for the first time this year. Do a lot of things for the first time this year on May 8th. Get your 10th win. Get moving. Figure it out. Just do something positive. That would be really, really nice coming up. We'll be back tomorrow for more Mike Dub. Jake will be back with me from noon to 3 coming up tomorrow here on 580 WIBW. That'll do it for us today. Coming up next, 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Have a great rest of your day.